People don't realize how fast attention shifts in the crypto market until something quietly starts pulling it back. One day everyone is focused on noise, on price swings, on headlines that disappear within hours, and the next day the conversation subtly changes. Not loud, not dramatic, but focused. That's where XRP finds itself again. Not because of hype, not because of promises, but because something underneath the surface keeps pulling attention back toward it. Right now, XRP news isn't about a single announcement or one dramatic moment. It's about accumulation of context. It's about understanding where this asset sits in a market that is slowly maturing. And if you're watching this video, it means you're not just looking for quick reactions, you're looking for perspective. Before we go deeper, stay with me for a moment. What we're about to talk about isn't designed to rush you, scare you, or excite you artificially. This is about understanding how narratives form, how markets react, and why XRP continues to remain relevant even when it's not dominating headlines. If you appreciate content that slows things down instead of speeding emotions up, make sure you're subscribed. And if this kind of calm breakdown helps you see the market more clearly, hit the like button. It supports the channel and keeps this kind of conversation alive. Now let's get into it. XRP has always existed in a strange space within crypto. It's never been purely speculative, and it's never been fully traditional either. That in-between position is uncomfortable for a market that prefers extremes. But uncomfortable doesn't mean irrelevant. In fact, it often means durable. Most crypto assets rise and fall on narrative waves. A story takes hold, price follows, attention explodes, and then reality settles in. XRP's story has been slower, more contested, and more public. That has shaped how people perceive it, and more importantly, how institutions evaluate it. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that silence means inactivity. In markets, silence often means work is happening away from public view. Systems are tested quietly. Conversations happen behind closed doors. Integration doesn't trend on social media. XRP's design focuses on speed, liquidity efficiency, and cross-border movement. These are not features that excite short-term traders, but they matter deeply to financial infrastructure. Banks and payment systems don't care about hype. They care about reliability, predictability, and compliance. This is where American audiences sometimes miss the bigger picture. US markets are heavily regulated, slow to change, and cautious by design. That caution doesn't kill innovation, it filters it. Anything that survives that environment carries a different kind of weight. XRP's continued presence in regulatory discussions has made it one of the most examined digital assets in existence. That examination has been uncomfortable, but it has also forced clarity. Clarity is rare in crypto, and when it appears, it changes behavior. Another thing people overlook is timing. Markets don't move when information exists. They move when information is understood. There's a long gap between those two moments, and that gap is where most people lose patience. XRP's price history has trained many people to expect disappointment. That emotional conditioning is powerful. When expectations are low, even neutral developments can feel significant. When expectations are high, even good news can feel underwhelming. This emotional cycle matters because markets are driven as much by psychology as by fundamentals. Understanding sentiment helps explain price behavior better than headlines ever will. Right now, XRP sits in a zone of cautious attention, not excitement, not fear. Awareness. That's a very different energy from what most people are used to, and it often precedes meaningful shifts. Another important factor is liquidity. Liquidity is the bloodstream of markets. Assets that can move large value efficiently without breaking systems remain relevant even when they're not trending. XRP's liquidity profile keeps it in conversations that many newer assets never enter. There's also a global element that's easy to forget. While US discussions dominate English-speaking media, adoption and testing happen worldwide. Financial systems outside the US often move faster, experiment more, and integrate sooner. XRP operates in that global environment, not just one country's narrative. This global positioning changes how progress looks. It's not linear. It doesn't follow influencer timelines. It follows institutional cycles, which are slow, methodical, and boring to watch. And boredom is something modern markets struggle with. People crave action. They crave constant confirmation. But infrastructure doesn't work that way. It's built to last, not to entertain. That's why many people misunderstand XRP's pace. They're measuring it with the wrong clock. If you zoom out far enough, XRP's story becomes less about price and more about placement. Where does it fit if global payments continue to modernize? Where does it sit if speed and cost become non-negotiable expectations? Those questions matter more than daily volatility. None of this guarantees outcomes. Markets don't guarantee anything, but understanding structure gives you context, and context reduces emotional decision making. This video isn't here to tell you what will happen next. It's here to help you understand why attention keeps returning to the same names even after years of noise. If you're still watching, you're already doing something most people don't. You're staying with a longer conversation, and longer conversations are where real understanding forms. XRP news right now isn't loud, but it's layered. It's not one headline, it's many small signals, and small signals add up over time. As markets mature, the assets that survive aren't always the loudest ones. They're the ones that can function under pressure, scrutiny, and regulation. XRP has already experienced all three. That doesn't make it invincible. It makes it tested, and tested systems behave differently from experimental ones. This is where patience becomes less about waiting and more about observing, watching how narratives shift, watching how language changes, watching how coverage evolves from speculation to evaluation. If you're looking for instant excitement, this conversation won't give it to you. But if you're looking for clarity, this is where it starts. Because in markets, clarity is rare, and rarity has value. And as we continue from that point, it becomes clear that what's happening around XRP right now isn't about urgency. It's about positioning. Markets don't always move when everyone is watching. Often, they move when attention is divided elsewhere. That's when long-term decisions are made quietly, without pressure, without emotional noise. One of the most misunderstood ideas in crypto is the belief that relevance must always be visible. In reality, relevance often hides in plain sight. Systems that are being evaluated, tested, or prepared don't announce themselves with fireworks. They operate in drafts, in pilots, in controlled environments. XRP has spent a long time in those environments. For American audiences especially, it's important to understand how deeply financial systems value predictability. Speed matters, yes, but predictability matters more. A system that works every time, even under stress, is far more valuable than one that works spectacularly only sometimes. XRP's design philosophy reflects that priority. Another layer to this conversation is trust. Trust in markets isn't built through marketing. It's built through endurance. Assets that survive criticism, doubt, and regulatory pressure develop a different kind of credibility. Not excitement-based credibility, but functional credibility. That distinction matters. When you look at XRP news today, much of it isn't framed as hype anymore. It's framed as analysis. That shift alone tells you something has changed. Analysts ask different questions now. Instead of will it pump, the questions become where does it fit and what role could it play? Those questions don't generate viral clips, but they shape long-term decisions. Another important factor is that crypto is no longer operating in isolation. It's increasingly tied to macroeconomic trends. Interest rates, global liquidity, and economic uncertainty influence how capital moves. In uncertain environments, efficiency and risk management become priorities. Assets aligned with those values tend to receive renewed attention. XRP's utility narrative becomes more relevant in those moments. When markets are flush with optimism, speculation dominates. When markets become cautious, utility regains importance. This cycle repeats across financial history. The tools valued during expansion differ from those valued during consolidation. Understanding where we are in that cycle helps explain why certain assets resurface in conversations. It's also worth mentioning that public opinion lags behind institutional behavior. By the time something feels obvious to the public,